Hello students, I am Sharaj. I am taking your paper Indian Economic Development since 1947, and today we are going to talk about the pro-crisis effects on the Indian economy. As we have already discussed about the reasons behind the crisis of 1980s and 1991. With the coming up of the IMF into the picture, India went for loan bail and interest payment reduction to the IMF, but then that was an aid which was in the form of tied aid. Now there are two types of foreign aid which an international organization like IMF or World Bank provides to a country, and the tied aid and untied aid. Tied aid are those aids wherein the loan is given by the IMF to cure your problem or any international organization to cure your problem, but along with that it gives certain parameters and guidelines along which you can work to reduce your crisis, or you can modulate upon your crisis. So for that matter, tied aid, India got the tied aid in 1991 from IMF, and it had to follow the broader aspect of macroeconomic stabilization and structural transformation in the Indian economy. And untied aid are those aids which are given by the foreign institutional investors or the organizations to a country which has faced a crisis, but then it does not interfere into how the amount of the money has to be used in or how the crisis has to be modulated. It is left with the country itself to freely discuss and interpret its policy changes so as to reduce the crisis. Just the assistance is provided by the organization. Whereas India had got the tied aid, where the assistance along with the policy guidelines was given by IMF, we had to open our economy, and it was called as the LPG model, that is liberalization, privatization and globalization model. So the new economic reforms policy was put forward in Indian economy on 24th July 1991 by P.V. Narasimha Rao, the then PM or the Prime Minister of India, and it was formulated and emancipated by the then Finance Minister Mr. Manmohan Singh. So under this policy, the main aim was the LPG model, that means liberalization, privatization and globalization. Now what does liberalization mean? Liberalization basically means that for an economy to have more and more of international trade so that it does not restrain itself to the growth of its boundaries, then you have to liberalize its laws where the private sector can participate into the economic activities of the nation, as well as the private sector of the economy can participate into the international trade aspects. So it is like loosening your guidelines regarding the tax payments, regarding the quota system or the production activities, and setting up new organizations. So the bureaucratic control over the setup of industrial units are loosened with the liberalization process. Now, what is privatization? Privatization basically means that rather than the government controlling the economic resources of the country, the private sector is promoted to come ahead and share the economic responsibility of the nation. So the stake of the private sector is increased into public organizations so that there is a mutual coordination of work between the public sector units of the country and the private sector units of the country. So privatization means increase in the stake of the private industry in the country. What is globalization? Globalization basically means increasing the share of international trade and international indulgence of an economy with the foreign market. So basically India wanted to trade more and more with the foreign countries. As we see that India was very much controlled by trade among the Indian economy and the communist or the socialist kind of countries. We were trading mainly with Russia, Cuba and all the socialist kinds of countries. Though America and European Union was a trade partner for us, but that was very limited. So with the globalization, we wanted to increase our trade aspects with all the capitalist economy of the country, and for that matter, changes were brought up into the capital transactions of the country. So that is the liquidity LPG model. Now under this LPG model, with the start of the new economic reforms, the government took up two strands of policy development. One was macroeconomic stabilization, and then the other was structural transformation. So today we'll see that how economic reforms in the country was leading to change in the overall change of the economy. The way the economy has been functioning was to be dealt upon now. Earlier what was seen in Indian economy, that basically it was a closed economy. We did not trust the international market, we did not trust the private sector, and it was mainly a public sector generated industrial activity within the country, where major resources, be it material or finance, were diverted to all the public sector units of the country. But with the change of the 1980s era, when consumerism started and more capital goods were invested into the country, it was realized that opening up trade boundaries is very much necessary for the economy. But then when you open up your trade boundaries, you have to see that you have a sound capital account as well as a current account. So for that we'll see that India follows the policy of 100% current account convertibility. That means for all its yearly or short-term liabilities, there is a process of converting the trade into international market. So there is current account convertibility in India, and all the short-term resources can be traded for in the international market. But when we talk about capital account convertibility, then according to the recommendations of Tarapur Committee, it has been mentioned that India cannot follow the policy of complete capital account convertibility, so that we have opened ourselves completely to international trade. Rather, we follow the policy of partial capital account convertibility. This partial capital account convertibility has been generated so that we keep a bit of our financial reserves with ourselves, and it is not converted into dollar for international trade. This helps in modulating the industrial sector of the economy, and we have to make sure that first our private sector strengthens itself and becomes more efficient so that it can compete in international market. So this partial capital account convertibility is actually helping the private sector to become efficient, so that growth and development can take place within the organization first, and then a fully fledged, developed, confident and an efficient organization of Indian economy goes and competes in international market for international trade. So this will betterly more lead to open economy, and this will lead to change in the economic process of the India. So that was called as economic reforms for the country. Thank you.